what do you think the consequences are for the hoi polloi like you and I, in a world where currency is now created out of thin air, money's created out of thin air, and no longer has gold backing?
Well, gold's official role as money has obviously gone, but it is still used as money from the point of not so much as a medium of exchange, but as a store of wealth.
Hmm.
And it's now the second largest holding by central banks of central banks. It's overtaken the euro. It's overtaken US treasuries, and only the US dollar is held in greater quantities by central banks around the world. And world central bank holdings have doubled in the last 10 years. And over the next 10 years, they'll probably double again. So it is still used by central banks, by governments. And of course, many corporations around the world keep some of their treasury in gold, and many individuals invest in gold and hold gold. So even though it has no official role, it is still a store of wealth that is widely used. And that role will never go away. As for gold's role as a medium of exchange, a gold sovereign costs about £650 today, and a gold sovereign is about the size of a 2p piece. So it's a pretty tiny coin. There's a lot of wealth in a tiny coin. So as a day-to-day medium of exchange, we tended to use silver, copper, and nickel. And you would use gold for larger purchases, a racehorse or a house or a suit or something. But for smaller purchases, silver. And in fact, the words silver and money are interchangeable in, more than 50 languages around the world. Argent in French, plata in Spanish, and so on. I think shekel means silver as well. And so gold does get used as a medium of exchange in extremis. So the Nazis used gold like mad, not for day-to-day exchange, but they were excluded from the financial system. So the way that they were able to re-include themselves was by basically fraudulently smelting bars, not with pre-Nazi stamps on them, so that they were acceptable, and then they would send them to Switzerland, where they'd be transferred for currency. So at the higher level they were used. And recently Russia paid for a load of drones which it bought from Iran to use in the war in Ukraine, and it flew 3 tons of gold over to Iran. Now, it's just totally impractical, flying 3 tons of gold to pay for something, but that's what they did. So as a medium of exchange now, digital technology has overtaken physical. We don't barely use cash anymore. And, any transactions between banks or whether you use Bitcoin, doesn't matter what the medium of exchange is, it's all digital. So gold's never going to have a role as a medium of exchange, because we don't accept in some kind of, Mad Max in extremis scenario. You could conceivably have a digital system of money built on top of gold. So like a modern gold standard, where you have the gold stored in a vault, but the ownership of the gold changes hands with digital. I mean, that already exists, and there's Glint does it, and there's another company called Tally that does it, and, with their own unique iterations. But at the end of the day, the beauty of gold, the reason that it's wealth in and of itself, is that it's wealth in and of itself. I give you the gold, you hold the wealth. It's nobody else's liability. And if you have a gold payment system built on top of gold, it involves a trusted third party, which might be the company that effects the transaction and so on. So its role as money of last resort has gone away. So I don't think gold ever really is going to be a medium of exchange again because of digital, in any meaningful way, because of digital technology. Its role will be store of wealth. And we don't use it as a unit of account. That's the third system of money, because we tend to use as a unit of account the currency that we have to declare our taxes in. So the British use the pound and the Americans use the dollar and so on as our unit of account. But actually the pound and the dollar are terrible units of account because they're not constant. They lose their value all the time, and their value changes over time. whereas gold is a much better unit of account for reasons that we described at the beginning of the program. It's exactly the same. It never changes. So it's the one constant through everything that's going on. Gold is the constant. And so for that reason, we should use it as a unit of account, but we don't. And if you do use it as a unit of account, it's actually, you can learn some very useful lessons. So, for example, if you look at house prices in gold, or you look at the Dow divided by gold, or whatever it is, there's some very instructional stuff in there. So that's that. So that's how I see the future of gold. There might, as I say, there might be digital payment systems built on top of gold, and it might be that there's this rumors doing the rounds again about the yuan being gold backed, and it might be that actually happens. But it will still be. We'll then have to trust the Chinese government to exchange their yuan for gold, and it may or may not happen. But it'll just be a gold standard. It won't be gold. And the reason that the 20th century gold standards failed is that ordinary people weren't actually handling gold. In Britain, we just took gold out of circulation. So even though we were nominally on the gold standard between 1925 and 32, there was no gold in circulation. And in America, of course, in 1932, they made it illegal for Americans to own gold. So there was no gold handled by Americans between 1932 and 1971, even though the dollar was nominally on the gold standard. Well, how can it be on a gold standard if ordinary people aren't allowed to own gold? It's just bogus. In the 19th century gold standards, gold coins actually circulated. But as I say, we don't use physical cash anymore. So money has evolved since then. So that's the future of gold that I see as a store of wealth more than medium of exchange.